We spend so much time planning for, well, the fun stuff in life, right? Retirement, maybe fixing up a house.
The good things.
Exactly. But today, we're diving into something maybe less fun to think about, but honestly, it's just so critical for your long-term security.
And that's planning for potential long-term care costs.
Right. And to really, make this real, let's talk about John and Eleanor. We saw their story in some materials from Vick Law, and wow, it really hit home.
Yeah, it's a common scenario, unfortunately.
You picture them probably looking forward to a peaceful retirement like most of us hope for, and then bam, John needs unexpected long-term care.
And the savings just start to evaporate.
At an alarming rate. They were actually facing the idea of having to sell their home? Their home full of memories.
Just to try and qualify for Medicaid help.
And the worst part, their first application got denied. Too many assets.
It shatters that piece they envisioned, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So that's our mission today. We want to unpack the pitfalls, what happens if you don't plan for this.
And look at how something called a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, or MAPT, might have helped them.
And maybe how it could help you, the listener, avoid a similar situation.
It's such a tough spot to be in. And like you said, John and Eleanor's story isn't unique. It really shines a light on the vulnerability lots of people face.
Yeah.
When long-term care becomes a reality, the costs are, well, they can be huge. And if you haven't planned ahead...
Your life savings can just disappear.
Exactly. And the key thing, as you mentioned, is that when you apply for Medicaid, the state looks at basically everything you own, your assets.
They have really strict financial limits.
Very strict. And if your assets are over that limit, you could be denied benefits.
Which leads to that nightmare scenario.
Right. People are forced to start spending down, selling off assets, sometimes even their home.
Just to become eligible on paper.
The financial stress is enormous, obviously. But think about the emotional toll, too. Losing your security, maybe your home, right when you're most vulnerable.
Ugh, it's just awful to think about. Something everyone wants to avoid. Understandably so.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about the problem, the potential nightmare. Now let's get into a possible solution. This Medicaid Asset Protection Trust.
The MAPT, yeah.
Based on what we've seen from the Vick Law materials, this sounds like a really important strategy for people worried about these costs.
It really can be. MAPT, it's a vital solution for folks thinking ahead. People worried about needing Medicaid down the road, but wanting to protect what they've built up.
So what is it, fundamentally?
Okay, so the basic idea is it's an irrevocable trust.
Irrevocable, meaning you can't just change your mind later.
Generally, no. Once it's set up and assets are moved in, it's pretty much set. And that irrevocability is actually crucial for why it works.
How so?
Well, you set it up during your lifetime. Its main job is to let you transfer ownership of certain assets, house, stocks, whatever, so you don't technically own them anymore.
Okay, so if I put my house into a MAPT, it's not legally mine anymore.
Correct. You can think of the MAPT like its own separate legal box, almost.
Or separate entity. Exactly. When assets go into the trust holds the legal title, not you.
And someone has to manage this box, right?
Yes, you appoint a trustee. And here's a really important point. The trustee has to be someone else, not you, the person setting up the trust, the grantor.
Okay.
That trustee manages the assets according to the rules you set when you created the trust. And this separation of ownership, that's the magic trick, so to speak.
That's what allows Medicaid to potentially ignore those assets.
Precisely. Because legally speaking, you don't directly own or control them anymore.
Makes sense. It's like putting them in safekeeping, legally speaking. Now, the Vick Law info highlighted a couple of really critical things to keep in mind. First one was about timing. Big flashing lights around timing.
Oh, absolutely. Timing is everything with MAPTs. This is where the 60-month look-back period comes in. It's a huge factor.
60 months? That's 5 years.
5 years. Medicaid literally looks back at your finances for the 5 years right before you apply for benefits.
And if you moved assets into an MAPT during that 5-year window.
That can trigger penalties. It could mean you're ineligible for Medicaid for a certain period, even if you otherwise qualify.
Ouch. So you can't just set one up when you realize you need care next month.
Definitely not. It really hammers home the need for planning way, way in advance.
Yeah.
Be proactive, not reactive in a crisis.
Yeah, you think about John and Eleanor. If they'd done this, say, 6 years before John needed care.
Totally different ballgame, potentially.
Okay, the other thing that jumped out was about the house. That's the biggest asset for so many people, and the fear of losing it is real.
Mm-hmm.
But the information suggested putting your home in MAPT doesn't mean you get kicked out.
That's generally true, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though the trust legally owns the house on paper, the way the trust is written can often allow you to keep living there.
Oh, that's huge. Because a home is more than just money, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's life, memories, stability. So while the trust holds the title, the terms can usually be structured to let you stay put. But again,
Needs to be set up correctly from the start.
exactly, clearly defined when the trust is drafted.
Okay, so assets in the trust are protected. What about income? Like if those assets, say stocks in the trust, generate dividends, does that count?
Good question. And yes, that's a key distinction. While the principal assets in the trust are usually shielded from Medicaid's asset limits,
The income they generate might not be.
correct. Income produced by those trust assets, interest, dividends, rent, whatever that income might still be counted by Medicaid when they figure out your eligibility or how much you might have to contribute to your care.
Ah, so it's not a total shield for everything.
Not necessarily for the income stream. The rules around income are pretty complex too, and they vary, so it's another area where you really need to understand the specifics for your situation.
Okay, so let's just recap the big potential pluses of a MAPT. Number one, clearly, is protecting assets, savings, investments, the house from being counted by Medicaid.
That's the main goal, yes. Shielding those resources from those strict limits.
And you mentioned the irrevocable nature provides security.
Right. Because you can't easily undo it, it creates a strong legal separation. Medicaid is less likely to view those assets as yours to spend on care.
Gotcha. And then there was something called estate recovery avoidance. What's that about?
Okay, so after someone passes away who received Medicaid long-term care benefits, the state often tries to get repaid from that person's estate.
Claw back the money they spent.
Essentially, yeah. It's called estate recovery. They might go after assets left in the person's name, including potentially the house.
But a MAPT can help with that.
A well-drafted MAPT can, potentially. Because the assets are owned by the trust, not the individual when they pass away, those assets might not be part of the probate estate that the state can recover from.
So the house or other assets in the trust could pass to the kids or other beneficiaries instead.
That's often the goal, yes. It protects the assets from recovery and allows them to go to heirs as intended. A really significant benefit for preserving a legacy.
That is a big one, preserving something for your family. Okay, as we've walked through all this, one thing is crystal clear. This stuff is complicated.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah. Medicaid rules, trust law. This is definitely not a DIY situation. The Vick law materials really stressed getting professional guidance.
Absolutely critical takeaway. The rules change, they vary by state. And setting up a MAPT involves real, legal, and financial complexities.
You need someone who knows the ropes.
You really do. Someone knowledgeable in elder law, specifically with these trusts, they can look at your unique situation, explain all the ins and outs.
Then help figure out if a MAPT is even the right move for you.
Exactly, and guide you through setting it properly, trying to wing it yourself.
Could backfire badly.
Big time. You could make mistakes that cost you dearly or even invalidate the trust protections altogether.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the main theme seems to be don't wait. Don't wait for a crisis.
Be proactive.
Proactive planning, looking into tools like MAPTs with qualified help, it seems essential to protect your assets and make sure you can get care later without losing everything.
Really can make all the difference.
Thinking back to John and Eleanor again, their story just highlights the potential heartbreak, the financial ruin that can happen without that planning.
The retirement they worked for just upended.
It really forces you to think, doesn't it? Considering the huge potential costs, financial and emotional, of long-term care, what steps can you take, like today?
What can you do now to protect your assets for your future and for your family?
Yeah, definitely something critical to think about and maybe start exploring.
To feel more secure. And